Hey, Michelle, how you doing?
All right, look at us back already.
Back already. An impromptu podcast here to chat about some of the drama, the what's the word I'm looking for? Well, yeah, for better or worse, the turmoil, the uproar about Iron Man's decision to go back to a single day world championship event in 2026. For those of you living under a rock, probably I don't think anyone listening to this actually doesn't know what's going on. I'm sure that you guys that are tuning in, you've also heard the news. You got the news probably Wednesday morning from Scott DeRue, the CEO of Ironman, announcing that overwhelmingly the data analysis, which I could totally tear apart here, suggesting that what the people want is to go back to racing together, that women pros as well as age groupers, as well as men and women, age grouper and pro, want to race together and want to race in Kona. And that is what the statistics and the survey results show. So,
And can I just I just need to pipe in here because oh my God, like when I opened up Instagram that morning, like whatever morning it was so clear to me. And I think I'm probably even more keenly in tune with this now because of like the political environment and the news and all and you have these media companies that are coming out and they're like telling you how they feel in a way that's meant to be telling you how you should feel, right? And it's everybody thinks this. We're all so excited. This is the best news ever, right? And I'm watching these videos of like professional triathletes and past winners of the event, and like I'm thinking, okay, and I love Daniela Reef. So as I say this, this is not like a bash on her. It's more an idea of the media environment that we are living in, that I'm thinking there's no way that out of her own goodwill, Daniela was like, I'm so excited about this. I'm going to record a selfie video and put it on Instagram. When I would bet so much money that they reached out to her and paid her some sort of stipend, right, to like put that out because they're like, oh, well, I guess if Daniela, like, she's not in racing anymore, like, what does she care, right? And here's the thing, I'm not even saying she doesn't believe that, right? Like, there's every possibility that she genuinely is like, I'm really stoked about like this one day thing. I think this is how it should be. That could be her very real opinion. And the fact that it was like necessary to make a 3-minute video to put out on Instagram to influence, because let's face it, the reason for that was to influence the way that we feel, right? To let us know that the first thing here is this is great. We're all so excited. This is so pumped. Finally, we get to go back to the one day Kona that we've all wanted. I'm like, okay. And I just literally is like, my brain is so attuned to like propaganda, right? And she might actually believe that. That's fine. But like, I don't know. The whole idea of now we all have to believe it because that's what the pros think is and I'm not saying I don't believe it. I just think that like the way it was spread was very intentional to try to get everybody behind the move.
absolutely. And I apologize for anyone watching this video. I'm all over the place because it's post dinner time, and my dog's post dinner time is
Did you
chaos.
not feed your dogs
No, no, no. I did feed them, but it doesn't matter.
post
Even though
dinner?
it's post dinner craziness, right? And they're not supposed to be crazy after dinner, right? That's calm time. But for whatever reason, after I feed my dogs, it's impossible for me to get them to stay calm. So I am going to apologize up front because I might be a little all over the place trying to get them to not bark like crazy people.
You know what? Even if we hear
Yeah,
them, like these impromptu videos are like it's cool. It's like this is real life. We live with dogs barking in the background.
right. Yeah, except they're very
Let
loud.
them
So
bark.
yeah, right. So I completely agree with you. So here, let me just very briefly. I actually have been on a review panel all week, and so I've not actually been in on social media as much as I might normally be. So I actually haven't seen a lot of these videos. I saw a couple of things about pro women saying this is fantastic and everyone being on board. And I don't doubt that they had this stage. Like it wasn't just like Scott DeRue operating in a bubble, right? Like I'm sure that this was a media role, like they had people lined up. And of course, they might actually think what they state in the videos, but having that, right, like a polished, like 3 minute, how this is amazing, does seem to me like that, they wanted everyone to get on board behind the pro women that, yeah, I've also heard overwhelmingly they are in support of this.
It's
Yeah.
a
So,
propaganda way to say things, to be
right.
like
Yeah.
everyone is in
Right.
support of this. And you're like,
right.
are
Whoa.
they though? Like,
Well,
I don't know that everyone is, but maybe a lot of
right,
people are, and there may be some pros to it, but like, it's
right.
like to say like everyone is in
Everyone
support of
is.
this
Well,
is
and
disingenuous.
absolutely, absolutely agree. And so how do you want to tackle this? Let's maybe do a brief like background.
Well, I think that I don't know that we need to go back to, I mean, if you want to
Yeah,
go back to the background of like,
yeah,
how Iron Man started and all that, we can. I think that, and actually, maybe that is a good way. Like, if you want to start there, I feel like the pivotal turning point was clearly COVID and
right.
like the fiasco
Absolutely.
that was very
Yeah,
real that was involved in all of that and Iron Man trying to navigate their way through. And what we're seeing now, I don't know that it's as much of a contraction as it is like they're just going back to the way that they used to do it before COVID. And the only reason it changed was because of COVID. They never changed this
yeah,
race to a 2 day format and gave women their own day because they were like, we really love women's sports and we want to support women's sports and we want women's sports to get better. So let's give women their own day. That was just like a sideline fallout of
hmm,
the COVID disruptions and that
absolutely.
company continuing to sell qualifying spots for a world championship that wasn't going to happen for 2 years.
Right. Absolutely
Right.
agree with
So
this.
like that,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like it
Huge
was a
factor.
fallout kind of thing. And so like for anyone who thinks that like Iron Man started to come around to give women their
Yeah,
own day and now they're reneging, like that is flawed logic from the beginning because Iron Man, the only reason they did that was because they sold too many spots to Iron Man World Championships because they were trying to stay afloat during this COVID period and they're a private company and that's their right to do if that's what they want. I
right.
mean, like, right. So
Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah, I mean, just very, very briefly, right? So you said, what was the date? This is your birthday. 1978 was the
so the
first.
first Ironman happened on Oahu, where I live. It happened on my birthday, which they're celebrating me. No, they weren't, but it was 1974. So like I was 4 years old, and so when I heard that's the reason that I remember it is because it was like that's my birthday. I was four, and then when I live on Oahu, I'm like I was meant to do this. Like that's
Right,
like
right.
all the stories in my head of why I'm an Ironman.
Yeah. So it was combining the Honolulu Marathon, the Waikiki rough water, open water swim, right? And then somewhat an organized ride. I think it had to set like around the island
It's
or
called
had
the
to have been,
Dick
it
Evans
was like,
Memorial Road Race, and it's
right.
112 miles, and
Okay.
it
Yep.
happens every year. It's actually like there's so much drama. I'm on like the board that now like organizes that race, and I run one of the aid stations that because the ride goes like right by my house. But anyway, just as a little plug, that bike race still happens every year, typically in September. So like anyone who wants to come out and ride the original Ironman course, I give out water bottles around mile 75. It's a cool
Awesome.
course.
Awesome.
But anyway, yeah, that's what it is.
So, and then through, so did it swapped to Kona, to the Big Island, pretty quickly, right? Like, I don't
It
remember.
was only a
Like,
couple of years. It might
yeah,
have been 81. I think you had mentioned maybe it was
81. I
1981.
think,
It might have been 81 that it moved over there. And
yeah,
if it did, it would be because there's so much traffic on Oahu, right? So like
yeah,
when that gets bigger,
yeah,
it's like
yeah,
it would be impossible to hold an Ironman here on Oahu. We do not have open roads that
absolutely.
would
Yeah.
support that.
Right, right. So through the 80s, Ironman, that the Ironman distance was building, I think we grew up, I remember watching the Iron Battles, right? That were televised on NBC. And so, that, yeah, it was gaining a lot of popularity in the 80s. And as, I don't know the numbers, but I know that probably it wasn't a big deal on in terms of limiting athletes, right? I think for a long time it was like submit your application and you can do Ironman Hawaii. Then they kind of went to for a long time. I think when I got into the sport, there might have been a couple of 70.3s that you could qualify at, but I know prior to that, you could even qualify at some Olympic events, right?
But yeah, like
Qualify
Muncie
and
in
then
May
like
was a
submit,
qualifier, like
right?
St. Anthony's, I think. Like there
Same,
were Olympic, yeah, there were Olympic distance races that qualified and some half Ironmans. I mean, it was almost unheard of actually to go do a whole Ironman before you went
right,
and did another
right,
Ironman. Like you did
right.
two in a year. What?
Yeah. Yeah, it was crazy. And there weren't that many around. It was like, Kona was like, the big one. I think can't
New
Penticton
Zealand.
was
New Zealand was
New
I think
Zealand.
New Zealand might have been the first one, or like it came about around the same time. I know that New Zealand was happening in the early 90s. And then I think Penticton came about not too long after that. But yeah, for a while, there were only a couple of Ironmans around the whole world, Kona being one.
Right.
So it would
Right.
have been ridiculous to think about doing an Ironman to qualify for Kona because there weren't that many Ironmans to do.
Right. 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 So at some point, there were too many athletes that wanted to race Kona and they went to the proportionality, right? Like it's just dependent on how many men and women race at any other Ironman or Ironman total, Ironman branded events around the world. And that was going to determine the number of athletes that could race in the world championship, as well as they always hold, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head either, for legacy. You know, there's a certain number of slots for legacy, which has changed in the last few
Program
years.
came out later,
Yeah.
right? Like the
Yeah.
legacy program came out
And the,
later.
and the CEO challenge. And I don't know when those came about. I don't
Mhm.
remember. It was probably,
There was always a lottery. The lottery was probably the oldest, like of the ways to get in that didn't involve qualifying. I think the lottery was the most original one or like the oldest way to get in. But interestingly, do you remember when that came about? Like somebody sued Ironman and essentially called the lottery illegal because you had
I
to
don't remember
pay for
that.
a long time. You had to pay like 50 or $100 to enter the lottery, and then they would draw out 50 names or whatever and announce it in April. Um, and there were that was a really popular program. I actually had an
Hmm.
athlete that got in that way. Like he paid his 50 or $100 or whatever. He put it, and then he called me. He was like, "Oh my God, Michelle, like I got into Kona.
Yeah.
You got to help me train for this." And I was like, "Oh,
Yeah.
okay." But then they made that illegal because they called it gambling. Because like you know, like you to pay money, they were like Ironman
Yeah.
can't charge money to give like a an opportunity, which I don't know. I mean, whatever the
Yeah.
laws
It
were.
sounds
I remember thinking that like, what, the lottery's going away, but the lottery didn't go away. They just made it free.
okay. I didn't know that. And I guess maybe if I said lottery, maybe I meant the legacy. Did I say both? I don't remember what I
You
just said.
said
I
legacy,
said
but the
lottery.
legacy didn't
Okay.
come about for like, I
Till
don't
later.
remember
Okay.
when it was, but it
Yeah.
was in the early 2000s.
Yeah. 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 And I know they've changed that. I don't remember the specifics, but I know I've had some athletes that were trying to get there via the legacy program and they've made it more challenging. I think it was like, it used to be like 12 Ironmans or something like that. And there was no time limit. It was like, if you've done 12 over some period of time, could be 20 years, it's fine. You know, like then you can enter your name. I think when you enter, you had to have done one within the last 2 years or something. And I
Yeah.
don't quote me on any of these because I don't know off the top of my head, but now they change it so that you have to do 12 within like a shorter amount of time because Ironman wants you to continue to spend money. It's a for-profit
And
organization.
I would say though, like I was always really in favor of the legacy program. Like to me, like the
Yeah.
legacy and the lottery both. Like I thought they were really
Yeah.
cool because like the whole like the lure of Kona like being what it is. And let's just be frank, like there are some athletes that are not going to ever be fast enough to qualify for Kona.
Me.
But like it keeps them in there, right? And to do 12 Ironmans is a life commitment. Like it's a real, like you're a lifer. If you're doing 12 Ironmans, that's a lot. And so for those people, I'm like, you know what? Good on you. I think that's like,
I think
if
I
you
think
have
I
the
met.
time and the money and all of that to like dedicate to that and the desire, the will, the
Yeah.
drive, like you're the kind of person that
Yeah,
like,
I agree.
I don't know, like give them their shot. Like I'm not against people having their shot. I think it's really cool. So I think that program, I don't like the time limit on it, but I do like the idea
I
that
do.
it's
Absolutely.
an opportunity.
Yep, absolutely. And I've worked with athletes that have gone through the old legacy program. I think that was prior. It was like 2015. So and yeah, they were lifers, and they'd done way more than 12, and they love doing them, and they had a ton of fun, and they were really involved in the community, and I think it's fantastic as well. So the whole. It's restricted on the pier. So I've spectated Kona a few times, and I've been to Kona as a geologist, right? Like I've been there for vacation when I lived in Hawaii. Very different. I have to say, I prefer Kona without the triathletes by far. So I think Kona's a
Me too.
fantastic place. I did not enjoy being a spectator in Kona. And yeah, I'm totally, I never qualified. My fastest Ironman was a little bit under 10:30, and that was only good enough for fifth. And that was what year,
Which in and
2017?
of itself is like the problem with the proportionality thing, right? Which we can get into later. But like, because like I never went 10:30. My best was 10:50, and I did it 4 times. So
Yeah.
like, right, you just go
Yeah.
like it's not
Yeah.
it's not fair is
No, well, and
the answer.
so where was I going with that? Back before COVID, right? Before the change, before the last 3 years when they gave equal, they moved to 2 days for men and women.
You were talking
And
about the peer, because that was their
the
argument
peer, right?
before. Like that
Sorry,
was when they were
right.
trying to even make like female pros equal.
Yes.
And they're like, oh, we
Oh,
don't have room for
we
another
can't,
15
right.
female bikes on the pier. And you're like,
Oh my God, that's so
okay.
ridiculous. Yeah.
Now
Um,
they do though, because they actually said there'd be like close to
yeah,
3,000 people. You're like, oh,
3,000 people.
magically, we found more space on the pier.
Right. Yeah. No,
Like,
it's
did we
that,
build a
yeah.
bigger pier?
Exactly. Yes.
Anyway,
So
keep
the
going.
peer was the
I'm sorry.
peer is the limiter. Peer. Well, that's what Ironman has said has been the biggest limiter to, advancing women in sport and or women in Ironmans. I'm not going to say sport, but the quality, right? Or the yeah, having equal slots. So now they have found more space on the pier, which I think is hilarious. Oh, I know what I was going to say, right? Like Kona is an amazing place, and it is like I feel for the community of Kona, right? Because that event last time I was there was probably 2014, so quite a while, and it was crazy in 2014. Can't drive anywhere, can't dangerous, right? Like people everywhere. And having lived in mountain towns for the last 15 years, like we can't stand leaf peeper season, right? When the trees change because we can't make a left-hand turn. And so I think for sure, I'm sure that Kona enjoys having the tourism and the dollars come in. However, it's massively disruptive to the community. And so when they tried to host a 2-day event, what, Thursday and Saturday? Was that when they did that? I'm sure it was very disruptive. And so I
There.
respect,
So like I can
yeah,
like
yeah,
talk to all of that.
yeah. So, but I mean, I guess I only lived in Hawaii for a few years, and Hawaii does survive on a lot of tourism dollars. So there's a lot of pros and cons, and there's a lot of pain, right, for a lot of residents of Hawaii. And so I guess I've always kept that very front and center too. Is, for a lot of triathletes, you would hear, oh, just deal with it, right? Or, and I have to say, okay, I'm going to sound like maybe kind of an asshole here, but a lot of triathletes are pretty self-centered. Let's be honest, right? And so not having that like you are there as a visitor, right, to the island, and keeping that in the forefront of your mind while you're there is something that I don't think a lot of people do. So I'll
Well, I mean,
say
and
that.
so even if we like, I'm happy to dig into that even more. Like, you think about the personality profile of the kind of person who is training and racing Ironman triathlon at that level, right? And so like even that you just go, here's someone like they've been training for the last 5 or 6 years, they've been building up to this, they've done a couple of Ironmans before, most of them got close to qualifying but didn't, right? And like got the bit in their mouth and be like, I think I can do this, and then they're strategically planning their races because like, let's face it, like it's challenging to qualify, or at least it used to be challenging to qualify. And so it's like you had to choose your race correctly and you had to train perfectly and do all the things and then get one of the top couple of spots, paid a lot of money to go there. I mean, these people, and this is a very stereotypical generalization, but they're the kind of people who are like, when I want something, I will make it happen. Like very few people luck into Kona, right? It's not common that you're like, oh, I don't know, it just fell in my lap. Like that's like not how it works. So it's like if you've spent years of your life dedicated to this project and then you spent like tons of money and you did all these things, like by the time you get there, you're so self-absorbed. I mean, by the nature of just being on that journey requires a degree of being self-absorbed, right? Because you're going to put training first, you're going to put your sport first, like, and if you don't, you're likely a healthier person in the sport, but you might not be good enough to qualify for Kona, right? You know what I mean? So it's like and that's not everybody, obviously, but a lot of them. And I remember that feeling being over there, whether I'm watching or racing. It was like, oh my God, these people, they're just entitled is the word. Like they believe that
Yes.
like I deserve to be here. And like the reality is like you do. Congratulations. Like you're a really fast, strong athlete. You've put in a lot of work. You've done all the things. And like I will celebrate that. But with that attitude comes this peacocking, like I deserve to be here, blah, blah, blah. And like that is the attitude that in Hawaii, local people hate so much,
Yeah.
like so
Yeah.
much. It's like, and it's so against the local culture to have like any peacocking in any arena. So like this
Yeah.
is not about triathlon. This is about like that entitlement attitude coming into the islands and dealing with local people. And Kona is typically a small town, although it's growing. It's much bigger now than it
Yeah.
was, a decade ago. But yeah, so like the local sentiment over there when Ironman comes, I've asked a lot of people, and I can do so in a way that I don't know how you say this, but like it's obvious that like I live on Oahu, or I'll tell them, like, oh, I'm just curious. And like you can talk in a way that like get them to say their real feelings. And it's interesting, like it's probably 50, half the residents are like, we're so glad Ironman's here. Like we love it. We love the energy and the environment, and it's so good for our economy. And welcome. We're so glad you're here. And then the other half is just like, this is an absolute pain in our butts, a giant distraction to our lives. And these people are entitled jerks, and they just make the lives of the residents harder for the week or whatever that they're in town. And when it happened over the course of 2 days, it was a lot. So like, I would say that the 2 day event for the athletes, absolutely ideal, right? Like that's the ideal for the athletes. For everyone else, it's like it's not feasible. Like it's not feasible for the race directors, it's not feasible for the volunteers, it's not feasible for the community, it's not feasible for anyone other than the athletes.
I could see. So maybe that's a good segue to talk about, right, the survey. So let me just ask you, did you get the survey?
I didn't.
I did not either. How many? And so I've done 12, I think I've done 12 Ironmans. So,
And 18.
yeah. So like we're the lifers, right? So, and I know that I had not, but I have not raced since 2019. But I get all the Ironman emails and, they're obviously still trying to sell me to going to races, right? And like, I should probably just unsubscribe, because I'm not, for maybe other reasons, which we'll get into. But, yeah, so the survey, right? And this is where and I'm going to pull some of the numbers I think I heard from, I don't know if it was in his email or one of the, I think Feisty, Sarah Gross and Kelly put out, a podcast. So I didn't listen to it all, but they had some clips, that I happened to see on the socials.
To the Pro Tri News one where Scott Drew came on.
I did not. I've been
Okay,
totally
so this will
in
be good
science.
because I listened to that
Yeah.
one, but I
Okay.
didn't listen to the feisty one yet.
Okay.
Like I do actually want to hear what
Yeah.
Kelly and
Yeah.
Sarah have to say, but I didn't want to listen to it before
Yeah.
we did this because I thought
Yes.
like
Well,
I want my own opinion here, and then I'll go
right.
back and listen to them. But I listened to the Scott Drew one because I figured that one would at least be more factual.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Because like they
Yep.
had, I mean, maybe Sarah
Yeah.
and Kelly had facts too, but like I figured, I don't know. I wanted to hear it straight from Scott
Yeah.
Drew's mouth.
Well, it's, and so yeah, we can riff on because I haven't listened. I've literally been on science all week, and it's international or national or international space day. I can't keep track of all the international days on social media anymore, but it's space day, and of course the big budget came out, which slashed NASA's budget by like over. It's the largest reduction in science in R&D, research and development, in like 50 years. I think 50% budget across NASA's.
Probably only get a grant if you like go kiss the ring, right? Like bend
Oh, I'm
over,
sure,
kiss the ring.
probably. That's
That's the
that's
only
coming
way that you
next.
can
That's
get a
coming
grant. Yeah.
next.
Sorry for
Anyways, yeah, I
science
know.
in America.
Yeah. So, but that does, I think, the general political situation in our country, I mean, it definitely factors into how pissed off I was when I got the email and then I sent that to you and I said, we should do a podcast on this. It's not just because I was expecting this, right? Like I was expecting this to go back to a single day. Ironman's a for-profit company. The numbers didn't make sense for them. And so this isn't even like they don't care about women's equality or spots. They just want your money. So that's the reality. And anyone that thinks differently is just, yeah, you don't understand Iron Man, right? Well, so statistically, they said that 58% of women wanted to race Kona, right? And so that's what the women want to race Kona, right? But 42%, and I didn't get the survey, so I don't know these questions for everyone out there. Like you can build surveys to get the results that you want on the one hand, and then on the other hand, surveys can also depending on how vague the questions are, you can still get the data that you want out of it. Like there's a whole science to developing appropriate, unbiased survey questions. And I have no idea what kind of money they put into developing these surveys. But what it sounds like is 42% of women, age group women, said that they would prefer doesn't matter, Kona or Nice, but they wanted a day on their own. They wanted their own race. And everyone surveyed, I think, said well, no, men and women, Kona overarching was the popular choice, but not by a ton for women. It was, I mean, within 3 years, the women basically said, it's okay to have it in Nice or somewhere else as long as we get our own day, but not by, it was 42-58 apparently, right? And so they use this to justify that overwhelmingly everyone wants to race Kona, but we can't do 2 days. So guess what? Everyone's just going to go back together and we're going to go back to the proportionality of slots. So, I mean, that's just not overwhelming at all that, they
Overwhelming
used.
if you include the men, right? So what I heard Scott DeRue say, like on the Pro Tri News podcast, he said overwhelmingly, it's Kona. And then he used the men and women. He used like the 58% or whatever of women, but with the men. And it's like, well, of course the men. Well, actually, I take it back. This was the question they apparently asked a question on the survey about how slots should be allocated. And should it be equal 50-50 men and women? Or should it be proportional according to participation? And he's like, not surprisingly, the men were overwhelmingly in favor of the proportionality. But then he's like, but even the women were 50-50 on if it should be proportional or
Or
equal.
just equal.
And I was like,
Wow.
and he goes, and we could go into
What?
the reasons for that. And then they like moved on. And I'm thinking like, I would love to dive into the reasons for that because I think there's some
Yeah.
psychology. Like if you're a woman and you're like, no, I definitely think that it should be proportional, then like you really bought into like the patriarchal
Yes.
society and like
Oh,
some
yeah.
some critical thinking or some self-reflection on where you learned that men should be in charge of everything and that men
Absolutely.
deserve more than women. Like that's something to really like dive into of understanding why that is your belief, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because it doesn't
Yeah.
have to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I haven't talked to this person in a while, but I happen to know a triathlete that is on that spectrum, and had said for the entirety of my knowing her that, that's the way it should be. And of course, this person trains basically like a pro, independently wealthy, not a pro, and has qualified numerous times, right? So obviously in that situation, it does work to their benefit. But I've always thought like super
Well, the
curious,
thing
like
is,
what?
if you're independently wealthy and you train like a pro and you qualify every year, and it's ridiculously hard to qualify as a woman because there's one spot in all the age groups or like maybe two, then your status goes up.
Yeah, that's true.
You
That's
know what I
true.
mean?
Yep.
Like, so
Yeah.
then it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the harder it is to
Yeah.
qualify, the more status there is involved
Absolutely.
in
Yeah.
like acquiring that. And so if you're in that like top half of 1%,
Right.
then that's going to be your preference
Totally
because
true.
your status remains high.
Yeah. No, that's true. Yeah. And I know I had seen over the last few years some very well, it was on the socials, right? That they were rolling slots, they couldn't fill slots. Now, but that was for Nice. I don't think that they rolled any
No, I mean,
slots
it was kind of
for
true even
Kona.
for Kona.
Really?
There was a race that I was at in, well, it's Honu, the half Ironman in Hawaii.
Hmm.
And it was for the women's only. So whatever year that was, it must have been 23. So
Hmm.
23. I mean, I was just dumbfounded. It's like I've been in the sport since 1997 was my first Ironman, and
Hmm.
I've just never seen anything like it. Even for Kona that year, it genuinely was the case that if you were a female and you showed up to Honu in
You
2023,
you
they
got a
had
slot.
so many spots that like they were rolling them down in a way that I've never encountered. I've seen it for half Ironman. They're for the half Iron 70.3 World Championships. I mean, literally, the guy was up there going like, "If you're in the 20 to 24 age group and you race today and you want to go to Kona, come on
Wow.
up." And I was like,
Wow.
"Wow!" Like that's
Wow.
like it. And I think it was a lot like the expense. There's certain age groups that it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
like
Well, I couldn't
but
have.
to fill like 2,000 women for that, like it was, you had to
Yeah.
really like
Yeah.
give away a lot of spots. And
Yeah. Yeah. And yeah. And so I understand that. I think if there had been more time to let this
Mhm.
develop,
Yeah.
that would not have been the case. And we would have seen, well, I mean, my philosophy is top down, like you make the decision to have equal slots, like top five at every race, top three, whatever the numbers make sense for the number of races you have all over the world. It's just a, top five, top three, whatever. I think at that point you would have seen more and more people, more and more women entering, and the quality and the, performances go up. That's my gut feeling, and I think there's a lot of other sports that have shown that it's impossible to not have that happen, right? Like that you give people the opportunities and they will rise. So these 3 years, huge issues, right? COVID, coming off of COVID. I know that, it was mentioned, I think, and I don't remember now where I saw it, but that a lot of times Kona is the capstone, and then people leave, right? Like that was what they wanted to do. And so after they did Kona, they're done with the sport. And so I get why Ironman would then, okay, well, we're going to make it harder so that you stay in the sport longer, keep spending money to get to Kona. That's a perfectly valid business plan. But I think 3 years, I mean, it's basically like saying, when they opened up Boston Marathon for women, if they would look at the number of women that were running Boston in like the early 80s, they're like, oh, well, women just don't want to run marathons. Like they gave it 3 years, right? And now what we see in running is that women are pretty much equal to men. And I don't know the numbers again. It's maybe a little bit less in Boston. So yeah, this whole idea that, well, we gave women an opportunity and they just didn't show up, right? Like that's just not true. It's just not true. Now, I also think, and we've talked about this on the side, I think about, and it's been mentioned and elsewhere from other people that have been in sport for a long time, in triathlon for a long time, is that there seems to be a reduction in participation. And so is that playing a role? And are women kind of, well, I don't know. Again, I don't have the numbers, but overall there's maybe a downturn in participation. So is that like, oh, women just, we are giving them opportunity, they don't want to race, or is it more generally, and the reason for that? Don't know.
The thing is, we have to be honest about the fact that in a lot of cases, that's true. Right. And it's not for everyone. So, like, are there women that want to race? 100%. There are. There are a lot of women that want to race. And there's a lot of women that don't want to race. I mean, you and I are both in that case. Like, we would
Uh,
be so hypocritical if we were like, women want to race, and like, but we don't want to. But like, women want to race. Like you and I are not racing anymore. Like, even like Sarah and Kelly. Like, I love them both. I know them both. They're friends of mine. Like, neither of them are racing anymore. Like the idea that women will go and like do their Kona, like they've been in the sport for 10 years and they've done, and they finally got to Kona and did their thing, and then they're like, or moving on to ultra running or moving on to
mhm,
doing something else, like that. It's a very legitimate point. And so, like, as much as we don't like that point, right, because it doesn't help our argument that like women should have their own day, because like I'm
mhm,
so conflicted on this, because I'm like, I love the women's only day, like the energy
mhm.
there, the everything, like the camaraderie, it was so feel good. I watched it in 2023 and it was amazing. Like, and I just thought, oh wow, the women stepped up. Like that was the coolest day. And so I'm like fully in favor of the women having their day and all of that, and also completely understand this argument that like the women don't want to race. And it's not just Ironman. Like I said before, I'm involved with local cycling racing here on Oahu, and they pulled me in to this local board of racing because they're like, Michelle, can you help us get more women out? Right, because the women will train. Lots of women want to train, like we want to have fun, we want to do the thing. And then on the day of the race, there's literally like 5 women that race on Oahu for bikes, like bike racing. And they're like, Michelle, bring them out, and I'll like try. And they're like, no, I don't want to. Like, that doesn't sound interesting to me. They're really happy to go out and ride their bike for 60, 70, 80 miles. But like, you ask them to do a 30-mile road race, like, nah, not interested. And it's like, I get it, because I'm also not that interested in that. And so like, I'm not going to twist everybody's arm and be like, you have to go do this race. But at the same time, you look at these races and it's like almost all men, and there's 4 or 5 women, that jump in, and it's just like the nature of it. And I think it's the same with Ironman. What Scott Drew said on the podcast, the Pro Tri News one, is that, and I mean, this is a scary number when it comes to proportionality. Like, if you're gonna allocate the slots by proportion, the question was asked, looking at the data, what is the percentage of men racing Ironman, like in a typical
Oh,
Ironman
it's
around the world? What's the proportion? He said 80-20. I
80,
mean, I thought that maybe
80,
it would be
20. Yeah.
like 70-30, 60-40.
No.
It's 80-20. He said even for the 70.3, it's like 75-25. Like it gets a little bit better, but not even. And there are very valid reasons that women aren't doing Ironman, right? Like the amount of time that it takes up, and women, if you're full time working and you have kids to take care of, and I mean, it's just like too much to go do all of that because the time commitment to do an Ironman and to do it well it's the life, it's your whole life. So yeah,
Well,
anyway.
so let me just, I will say from my own. So the reason I have not raced is I have not been inspired by well, so there's two factors really. One is finances. Like I'm, single scientist, not raking in a ton of money. Probably won't be with the future budget cuts. And so finances are a big issue for me at this point in time, not just with like race fees, but really like the races that I'm most interested in are now international. They have pulled all of my favorite races from North America. I think, and this is maybe a different conversation about like why do people race and what do people want? And there's a huge fraction of triathletes that just want flat and fast. They just want a fast race because they're PR, they're pace oriented. And my favorite races were Tahoe, Whistler. I would like to get to Placid, right?
Mhm.
So, but they have really pulled back. I mean, Boulder was a good race, hot a lot of times. So they've pulled a lot of the really what I thought were the best races because they were really hard and people didn't like them because they don't like hard races.
Well, they
So
don't like slow times.
they don't like slow times, but they equate hard. Well, so hard is, often slower. So yeah,
Right, but I
so
think that, I mean, if we didn't care so much about our time, then I think I don't know that most Ironman athletes are up for the challenge, right? So they're like, I don't care how challenging the course is, but if it's slow and they've already done, like if you've done your first Ironman, then like you don't care how slow it is, you have nothing to compare it to. But when you get to number 2 and 3 and 4, like let's face it, like what are you after? Because you've already proved that you can do it. So you're after a faster time or you're after a qualifying spot.
yeah, I guess maybe
I don't
I'm
know. Are
not.
there other
I'm not.
reasons?
I'm not. Well, I'm not standard, so I can't use
Yeah.
myself. I just love.
No, but
I
tell
just love
me,
the two.
but
Yeah,
share your opinion.
I mean, I just love to go to the well, right? Like, I mean, why do I race? It's like because I want to see what I can do and I want to, execute a really good race. And obviously, I was always in that range of, top 10, but not ever back when I was racing well. Like, you had to win your age group to get to Kona. Very on, I think that when I was fifth and did the 10:30, my PR, think there was two slots, maybe. I don't even remember. There might have only been one, and I had I think the third fastest marathon time out of all the women all day. And, it was like my standout race and it was like well off. Although I say that. And then, the spread between my time on that day and number one was like less than 20 minutes, I think. So the clustering, and I will say this, again, not having done a full data analysis, the clustering of, women at that level in the top 10, or maybe top five, whatever you want to cut off, is very thin, very similar to the spread of the men in that same like top five, top 10, right? However, in that race, the men's, I think what was I racing? 35, 39, probably. Their slots rolled to like 25th. And you want that spread it was like 2 hours from the top. But they just had, yeah, again, I mean, 80%, in late 30s, 40s, yeah, 50s, huge, huge age groups. And so, yeah, these guys were getting slots in like the 20th, 30th place, which apparently is what happened with the women's only races. I don't know where I was going with that. So a diatribe on, I
Well,
guess,
we were along
percentage.
the
Yeah.
lines of like women racing. Why do women race?
Yes, right. Because I want to go to the well. I like pain. That's why I race. But at the same time, I like racing in beautiful places too. So Tahoe, Whistler, I think Placid would be a good race for me if I ever get back to it. But you know, this is an aside. I've been pretty frustrated with Ironman Corporation since COVID. I think and maybe even before that, I think that they have not had athletes at the heart of their decisions, in a lot of ways, not just on women, men proportionality to Kona, but race safety, bike course safety, decisions on where to race. It's just they're looking at it from a dollar point, and that's fine because they are a for-profit corporation. I wish they weren't buying up other, independent races as they did for a long time, kind of put everyone else out of
That was a
business.
big mistake. Like, don't you think in hindsight, like, and this is totally off topic,
I know, off
like,
top yet.
don't you think, welcome to our
Welcome, yeah.
podcast. Michelle Mikki here, good at going off topic. But like, don't you think that, like, we take like a race like Vineman, right? Which was a long-standing, independently owned Ironman race. It was very popular. I did Vineman 3 times. I believe the first 2 times it was not Ironman, and then the last time it was Ironman. But it was like Ironman bought that race, held it for 1 year, and then
And
scrapped
then
it. And I'm
scrapped it.
like, that's crazy. And then they started one in Sacramento or whatever. But I'm like, why if if the whole idea of them going to back to Kona is like we honor the legacy and the history of the
Right.
sport and blah blah blah, and it's like, well, like Vineman has a really long
Yeah.
history in a great location in Santa Rosa. It's like wine country. I mean, it's so nice there. Everything about that race was great. I really liked it. And then it's like, and I don't know the Sacramento race, and so this is not me bashing the Sacramento race, but obviously you couldn't have both because like they're just too close.
Too
Like,
close.
I
Yeah.
don't know, like it's probably not the best idea from a business standpoint to have both because they would eat each other. But it's like, I don't know why you would scrap Vineman. You bought it. You bought it. You bought it. You already had, now you have it. So like, why wouldn't you
Right.
keep
So
it?
like, why don't you keep
I
it?
might
I
be
don't know.
missing something. I don't know what I'm missing there, but like, even, I don't
Well, I
know.
mean, it's got to be a dollar. I mean, I really think it's a dollar amount for
Yeah.
some.
Well,
They're
this is
getting,
what I was going to say, but like, don't you think that what the whenever the PTO, I think Sam somebody, the guy who was like the CEO of the pro triathlon, like
I don't
the
remember. Yeah.
T100 or whatever. I like him on interviews, like when I've heard him speaking about like what they're after, what they're trying to achieve, and blah blah blah. And in the begin, a couple of years ago, when there was this a big competition between T100 and Ironman. I mean, there still kind of is, but like early on, and a lot of people were really sussing it out, right?
Hmm.
Like who's going to come out on top here? And Ironman obviously has a history, but T100 came in with like better broadcast and a really cool product and lots of money for their pros. And what that CEO was saying is that like we love Ironman. We want Ironman to succeed because guess what? The more triathletes there are, like the more races there are, the more triathletes there are, and like
Hmm.
that lifts all of us up. So like they didn't see it like, oh, it's us against them and the age group athletes are going to choose one brand or the other. They just looked at it like a rising tide lifts all boats. And like I would look at it the same. So it's like we
Hmm.
need to have little local sprint races, right? Because those are your entry point feeder races. And once you did the sprint, you're like, I wonder if I could do an Olympic distance. And then like after you do the Olympic distance, like I wonder if I can do a 70.3 or a T100. And after you do that, I wonder if I can do an Ironman. And even if you did Vineman and when it wasn't an Ironman race, like once you did that, like the likelihood of you doing an Ironman is higher than if Vineman doesn't exist, right? So like I don't understand their rationale for dumping, for buying up and dumping these
A
local
lot of races.
races
Yeah.
that in a big picture sense would just raise all of triathlon together.
I
So
agree.
I don't know.
Yeah,
It's not,
I
I
know.
don't get that.
It's a short term. I would imagine, I mean, I'm again assuming that it's
Short
short
term.
term
Yeah.
dollars, not looking long term, which is exactly, the issue with going back. I really think that this decision is going to, well, one, I do wonder if there's a downturn overall in triathlon and specifically Ironman, given for the reasons that you have outlined, time to do it well. I mean, have you looked at the new bikes lately? Holy crap. They're more than
Yeah.
my Forerunner, so there's a real limitate. What's the word I'm looking for? There's a limitation. There's
Cheers.
a barriers. Thank you to getting into the sport, especially, I did everything secondhand, right? Like almost all my bikes are used secondhand, right? And I think there's still probably a avenue for that, for people to get into the sport if they're willing, to buy a used bike, buy used wetsuits, right? But, it's still travel centuries, it's expensive, really expensive. And I think Yeah, and I think maybe this is a little bit off topic, but so women kind of have a double um, difficulty, right? In their 30s, 40s, raising kids, and that still predominantly falls on the female in the partnership. Even when we've seen the statistics too, right? When men say they're doing half the work, usually maybe if they're really saying they're doing half, they're maybe doing 25% of the work. And so I don't
Fact.
mean to, yeah, I think even when you do have a partner that's very helpful, the reality is still, for whatever reason, and I don't truly know, but it does fall to the woman to do most of the caretaking. Not only that, but just the household stuff. And I think someone mentioned this even in the socials about you still see like ultra running and marathoning. Well, ultra running I think is a little bit separate because the distances are more similar to Ironman, right? Like the training, the time you're spending on the trails, I think there's better proportionality for women versus men, but there's still, it's very men dominated. And, someone commented, yeah, you see the women on the sidelines with the kids, like go daddy, but it's very rare to see the opposite, like go mommy. I mean, there are people and it's
Yeah.
changing maybe a little bit, but I don't know if it's going to change. Well, maybe it's going to change back with the new administration and their goals for women, but I can't
Well,
help
I
it,
would say
right?
it was really obvious the year. So because I was watching in Kona. So there have been 2 days now, 2 races that have been women only in Kona. Although the first one wasn't really women only, it was like all the women, and then they also did like
Right. Had some
men
men.
25 to
Yeah.
29, or like I don't know, young men and maybe older men or something like that. Like there were a few men, and it was mostly just trying to even out like 50-50 numbers like on the day.
Hmm.
But on that day, there were a lot of men with kids watching. The women did
Hmm.
it on the Thursday, right? And it was noticeable the difference in spectators that we saw, because I've watched that race pretty much
Right.
every year, so like I know what the normal crowds look like, and then what the crowds looked like the day that the women were racing, and it was a lot of men with little kids, and I was like, look at that, like that. I mean, to me
Hmm.
it honestly was really cool. But interestingly, year that it was only women. So it would have been 23 then, the following
Hmm.
year. Because 22, it was the year of the 2 races. 23, it was only women. And I tell you what, there were just not as many spectators,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
there just
Yeah.
weren't as many.
Right.
Usually, because in watching that race, like there's places where it's like it's so hard to get a spot to spectate. Like I can't even see here, and so you have to go down early and stake out your spot and find the
Right.
shade and like
Right.
all of
I
that.
remember.
And
Yeah.
like I was so shocked in 23. It was like, oh, you could get a spectating spot anywhere. It was so
Yeah.
easy to do, and I was like, oh, I don't think that's like great, but
Well,
like
and
there really weren't as many spectators at all.
I know several women that did that race. I had an athlete that did that race, and I think her partner went to Hawaii. But there's a lot of women that traveled alone, or they travel with their girlfriends to do the race. And I will say, like I think it's more common for women to go race with their friends, with their girlfriends, or and not and leave the family at home, right? Because or they get their folks to help out or whatever, versus when men are racing, it's almost always like a family, the whole family comes because they've got, I don't know. I mean, I don't want to overstep because I'm a single person, right? I don't have kids. So I don't want to project my thoughts too much on what's going on here culturally, but yeah. So there's that whammy, right? Of like women and the burden of child rearing and family kind of dynamics. And then, once the kids are kind of college age, a lot of women are in their mid 40s, he's going through perimenopause, menopause, and some women can float through no problem, right? Like it's not a big deal. And other women, it's, a lot of fatigue. And coupled with now the very popular opinion that endurance is bad for you, right? I mean, I won't name names, right? But no, you need to stop doing endurance and you need to go lift heavy shit, right? So it's like, okay. I mean, I have athletes, right, that are like, oh, maybe this is bad for me. I'm like, oh my God, stop. Right. You see Braggy looking at me here.
I know, I love it.
Yeah, I know.
Everyone should watch this one on YouTube so that you can see the dogs.
So I do think women are getting hit, right, pretty hard with the like pretty challenging stuff. And that's reality too, right? So yeah, I don't know where it's going with that because now I got both pups here and there. They're like, what are you doing on the computer? It's like almost 6 o'clock.
Yeah, come on, mom. It's
Yeah.
time to take us out. Yeah,
Yeah.
well, we can wrap this up then, I think. But
Yeah.
if we, I mean, trying to think of like some other points that I wanted to make just about the idea of this being back to the old ways that it was before. There is so like a couple things. Social media definitely wants us to think that, or like I guess it's probably like the Iron Man brand corporation definitely wants us to think that this is all good and everyone is in full support of it. And I
Hmm.
think that this is one of those situations where, at least for me personally, this is one of those where it's like both things can be true. Like where I'm holding, like two somewhat conflicting opinions about it, and
Hmm.
both are completely valid, right? Like and it's mostly because I have seen the women's only races, and I participated in them too, to be fair. Like at the 70.3 World Championships, it was in St. George. That was, I think, the only time actually that I competed in a women's only
Hmm.
race. There were no men there, and it was awesome. Like I
Hmm.
absolutely loved it. And every woman that ever has a chance to race in like a women's, okay, and now I'm not going to say every, because there are some that are like, no, we like the men, but the vast majority
Oh,
of women
yeah.
who do women's only races are like, I loved it. It's just the feeling, the energy, the camaraderie, the way they work together. I mean, like we're competing, but not in as vicious a way. It just, the whole thing feels better. And so the idea of taking that away, it does feel like a giant step backward. I get that. And Ironman is a corporation that's out to make money, and I get it. I totally get this argument too. Like it was only 3 years. They didn't give the women enough like chances to step up. But I also think if you look at the total number of women who are actually doing Ironman versus like the sport of triathlon, that likely there's more women that are super happy to just do like the shorter ones. They did one or two Ironmans, maybe one and done. It is the case that there are some women that were in the sport for a really long time. They finally got to do Kona and they're like, check,
And they're
like I'm
checked it
out.
box. Yeah.
I mean, there were some of my athletes did that, and I fully supported them. Like I understood that whole journey, and like you accomplished your big goal of 10 years. Congratulations, right? Like
Hmm.
moving on. So I fully understand that. When we look at the future of the sport, I don't know. Like, does it get better if Kona is really, really hard to qualify for? Is that like more of an incentive for women to stay in for a long time? Like, I think that's the bet that Ironman's making. I mean, we'll find out if they're right about that. But yeah, the reality is that it is going back to being a heavily male dominated Ironman.
Yeah.
And I mean, the hard truth is that that's what the market is demanding right now.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. I think, and for me, so I've never done a women's only event, and I was always where was I in the swim pack? Kind of, mid, upper mid, but not in the front pack, right? So when I would get on the bike, and I think I mean, I was always a strong runner, but towards the end of my racing, more heavily racing career, my cycling got pretty strong. And getting out of the packs was a nightmare, right? Like it absolutely impacted my race, burning lots of matches to try to get around packs of men drafting, men getting really pissed off that a woman passed them, right? I mean, just the back and forth. To be honest, maybe that is one of the reasons why I'm not as thrilled to race anymore, because it just got to be, I don't know, frustrating, right? And then of course I could usually run. I mean, it was very rare that a guy would pass me on the run, like pretty rare. It happened, of course, but like that's kind of how I race. But yeah, I mean, I was always in the packs. I was never a strong enough swimmer to get out of in front of the disaster. Although I know, for a lot of women that were able to get in the front swim packs, they were still getting caught up in the men's dynamic of the
Timer.
men's race.
My
So
my first
you were probably
Kona,
there. Yeah.
oh my God, my first Kona was in 2007 when it was still a mass start.
Wow. Yeah.
And like, oh
Yeah.
my God, like let me tell you, and you can imagine this scenario too. It was so real. And there were a lot of women, especially like women who were good swimmers, like we shared notes, like
Hmm.
afterward. And it was like, you can imagine this scenario because like if you're in a regular Ironman, if you can swim under an hour, you're in the top. I mean, there aren't that many people in a regular Ironman that are swimming under an hour, right? So like my personal experience in most Ironmans that used to be mass starts was that like, I mean, there were a few Ironmans. I remember in Ironman Canada where like I just took off and I was expecting this big battle, and I'm like, I didn't get touched. I didn't get touched by
That's
anyone.
amazing. That's
And I just
amazing.
like went off, and it was
Yeah.
like, I was one of the first people out of the water, but I was like, I just like found my little pack, and it was a small little pack, and it was fine. So the swim was like dream scenario. But then, and that's sort of what I was used to. So like when that happens, Ironman after Ironman after Ironman, you're like, oh, I just have to start hard, and then I'm going to have clean water. I'm going to have a little group of 4 people. We're going to settle in, find our little group and do our thing. And the swim was a dream. And then you go to Kona, and literally like, I mean, half that field, there's 2,000 athletes there, and 1,000 of them are coming out between 55 and 1 minute or 1 hour, right?
Right. Right.
So it was like the entire time, Mikki, for an hour, it was a boxing match for an hour. It never separated. It was the whole time, like every time you got anywhere near a buoy, it was a wrestling match. I remember talking to like one of my friends at the time, who we both did. I might have been like 2009. I think it was still NASCAR in 2009. Whatever year, and we were talking to her. She was like, I was like almost into. She goes, I was afraid for my life. I was thinking about my kids, and like I'm gonna leave them. He's like, I'm gonna drown here in this water in Kona. These men are
Yeah.
beating me up. So like the whole thing was a giant nightmare. And then you can imagine too, when it was a mass start, everybody gets on the bike together, and there's this man over the loudspeaker, and he's yelling, "It is the Ironman World Championships!" And so like
Jacking everyone's.
all
Yeah.
like, and they all are good riders, right? Like they're all good swimmers, and they're all good riders, and they get on, and everybody has the power that they want to push. And it's literally this peloton of 100 people together at a time. I mean, where it was just
Yeah.
like,
Huge.
how is that supposed to break up? And I remember like even, so I was trying to not draft, and like trying to get, so I would just stop pedaling, let a whole peloton pass me, and then try to get it back in. And then another peloton of 50
Yep.
people would like swallow me up and catch me, and I'd stop pedaling again. And it was like, oh my God,
Yeah.
like this is just, it was insane. And I thought, this is so dangerous that it made it like, I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
It's like
I
literally not safe.
obviously I never did Kona, but I had 4 or 5 mass start Ironmans before they went to the rolling. Yeah, I mean, I Arizona was one that was I was getting good enough. A lot of some of my early Ironmans when there were mass starts, I would just hang way back, and I probably wasn't even really like I was just trying not to get absolutely mauled. When I got a little more confident, I kind of got in the mix, and I remember thinking the same thing. Like, I mean, goggles ripped off and punched in the face, and I mean, horrible, swum over, right? And then getting on the bike, the same thing, right? And Arizona's flat and just loops, and so it was like, I mean, it really is a different race. It's a totally different race than if you're in the mid pack of things versus at the front, and with the
I
new
think the difference
proportional.
between a regular Ironman and Kona is more
True,
along the lines
true,
of
true.
everyone. Like if you qualified for Kona, you could swim 55 to
Yeah,
105,
yeah,
like everyone did, right? And
yeah,
you all biked about the same, right?
yeah,
And you all were like, if you had any energy left, then you could run. And so it was like to split them up, like
yeah,
it just didn't split up in a
yeah,
way. And if you weren't mentally prepared for that, it was ridiculous. But I think the women just did such a better job of
yeah.
managing themselves, like, and
Right.
to be fair, it was like in waves, when the women went. It'll be interesting to see what they do now. So just, back to like what's happening this year. Dr. Rue said that they haven't actually figured out exactly how many spots there are going to be. He said somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000, and they'll start allocating slots. My hope would be, I think if they were going to do this in a way that's, I don't know. I mean, there's pluses and minuses to all this, so like take all this with a grain of salt. But like my gut impression was you might be better off designating fewer qualifying races and then giving more spots to those races than having a whole bunch of races where there's one spot in your age group, right? So like what if they said, okay, there's going to be 2 North American Ironman races that have Kona spots, and they're each going to have like 100 spots, right? So like instead of 30, or maybe they have 200 spots, whatever, like they have a lot of spots. And what that does is it signals to people who are eager and like that's their goal. I want to qualify for Kona. Cool. you go to that race then instead of like another race where it doesn't have spots. Like you want to just like race yourself on the day and you don't care about Kona, great, go do that. You want to qualify for Kona, have a couple of races that are designated as qualifiers where
Hmm.
there's more spots. That way, maybe there is a chance for the spots to roll down, right? Like that way, maybe if you go and you went 10:30, you got fifth, that there were four spots in your age group, maybe one of them rolled down. And it feels to me like that is a more fair way to do it because if you go 10:30 on a course when you know there's not a Kona spot, great, you achieved your goal, but like Kona wasn't your, like that wasn't what you
Yeah.
were after. So yeah, like part of me is sort of hoping that that's how they allocate it instead of being like, oh, we'll just give spots to like all these races and they'll be like the
Uh,
winner of each of these races gets to go. Like that just,
I
I don't
I
know.
don't know.
I
I
mean,
mean,
there's probably an argument on the other side that I'm missing, but like
well,
my gut says,
I think that well, I mean, I can see that point. I think that given the low number of women in general that are racing, that would probably damage other races numbers, maybe, but maybe not because there's not that many women racing, so they don't care. And for the men, um, I don't know. I mean, I think it could potentially damage the men's numbers for some of the races that don't have slots. I don't know. Yeah, it's an interesting thought, I guess. I guess my thought, well, I mean, if you're a woman that this has been your, and I have athletes that they have raced Kona and they're like, I think maybe I'd like to get back to Kona. I've worked with athletes that have still not qualified for Kona. They were not able to get roll downs or they didn't race during the time when there was a lot of slots. I mean, you just basically have to be ready to win your age group, right? Like that's gonna, I would just plan on that. There might be more slots and maybe they'll do something like certain races will have more slots. Every race will have at least one or two, like the old days. But I mean, back in the old days, it was like, I mean, so when you have gone, you went four times. What were do you remember your placing for what, like in your age group, what you got? Was it first, second?
so I got second at Ironman Coeur d'Alene and but the others were at Honu at the half
On it.
Ironman
Okay.
when Honu, because like sometimes Honu was a
Right.
qualifier and sometimes it wasn't, but like when it was a qualifier,
Yeah.
then
I
yeah.
mean, the most I have heard of for a woman qualifying was a fourth place slot, and it rolled because it was a little bit. It was a race that was only about a month. I can't remember which race it was, right? But they had two slots in the age group, and both of those, the one and two, didn't want him, and so three and four got to go. But that, I mean, that's like super rare, super rare back in the old allocation way. So be ready to win your age group and maybe number two if you're, like maybe for some races. What else was I going to say? I mean, if you're really upset about it, right? I think what Michelle and I have both said is like Ironman is a for-profit corporation, so they are looking at bottom dollar, the bottom dollar. When, how to get more women involved. I did read the email again to like, okay, what are they actually going to do? There's not any clear path. And the reality is for every other sport, it's always a top-down approach for building that sport's representation and proportionality and funding. I mean, Title IX, 1972, was not like immediately women's soccer was super popular, right? I mean, that didn't happen. I mean, FIFA World Cup for women wasn't until 1991. The first Olympics was 96. So, I mean, I was a 90s kid playing soccer and it was like amazing, right? Amazing. And now no one would question that women's soccer, it doesn't deserve, well, I mean, some people still probably think they don't deserve the same equal pay. There's probably a lot of people, so I
There
shouldn't say
are
that.
some people who think
Okay.
that women don't
Like,
deserve.
this is true. This is true. And in our current times, I mean, somebody mentioned, if things had gone differently last, November, would this decision still be made? I think yes, but it's like
Yeah, I don't think
another,
that
yeah.
politics played a role in this at all.
But I think it's a statement of, right, like not a statement. It's just, it's an added, like, you know, punch in, not I don't even think it's a punch in the face really, but it's just another thing that I think women are already tired because in so many areas we are being, rights are being stripped, so this is just anyone that's kind of in the community, right? It's like, oh my God, really? I mean, I got emails from past athletes saying, this is horrible, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? I mean, you could boycott, if you wanted, I don't really think it's going to matter. You just, yeah. There's
What are we
really,
gonna do? Like,
yeah,
yeah,
there's
I feel
nothing
like
to be done.
what I do is I vote with my dollar and my
Exactly.
participation. You know, so it's
Exactly.
like if you don't like their policies, then don't do their
Yeah.
races. And that's really, I mean, it's crappy. I get it, but like also, I mean, if I was still racing personally, I'd be all over the T100 series, like just all over
Absolutely.
it. Like I think that
Absolutely.
that's a really cool distance. I like what they're doing with the sport. They have some really cool, interesting locations. I like the swim bike run, the way that it is, like with the um the way that it's split feels like a little bit more even to me instead of like a running dominated, kind of event.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, and I will say this, like I feel like, okay, like in the triathlon world, this is a really big deal, this week, right? Like, oh, this news came out and everybody's talking about it, blah blah blah. And I'm just like, oh my God, like in the big scheme of things that we
Wow.
all have to worry about, like I just have a really hard time like getting worked up about this one because it's like partly because like Ironman is voluntary. This is a sport for profit on from a private company that's allowed to
Yep.
do whatever they want, right? And so like
Yeah.
whether they succeed or not is going to largely depend on like did they make the right decisions for their own bottom line, and if the majority of their customer base is a bunch of men, like I mean if I was the CEO I likely would have made the exact same decision. And not saying that like, and the thing is I think that for women to be mad and to see it as they don't want us to succeed, they don't support us, like I don't think that's what their intentions are,
No, no,
right?
no.
Like I
Yeah.
don't think that
Yeah.
their intentions, I don't think anyone who was like trying to make this decision sat around at a board meeting and said women don't need to race anyway, we don't like women, we don't need to support women, we don't need to provide opportunities for women. I don't think that was any part of their discussion, their thought process, their anything. I think they were just like, they're not forward thinking in a way that's like,
Absolutely.
hey, if we provide this opportunity for women, we can grow the sport and that'll be good for women, right? Which it would be. But that's not their responsibility, and it's not the way that a for-profit company is operating. Like they're thinking about their bottom line like right now, and then maybe they're not, I don't know, maybe they are thinking long term and they're like they just see that the sport is and always
Yes.
has been male dominated and will continue to be, and like so they're just set up for that. And so
And
yeah, so
they,
I would say personally I'm just having a hard time like
yeah.
getting
Yeah.
upset about
No,
it.
yeah, it's not been on my radar for a long. I mean, well, yeah, it's not been on my radar in the last few years. I've largely stepped away from Ironman Corporation. I was already getting kind of like, this is icky. It's not that I'm not into endurance or I want, I mean, I love the big events, and I think the challenge series, I'd like to be able to save up and maybe do some of those races in Europe. Ultras, right? So it's not that I've stepped away to lift heavy because I'm in the right age range to do that, even though I do lift. But I think endurance is my, a passion of mine. But I don't like Ironman Corporation. I haven't for a long time. So yeah, I mean, I think that, man, maybe I am like showing my middle age because I'm like, where was I going with that? I guess in the bigger scheme of things, yeah, it's also not been like, I'm really upset about this. I mean, I'm much more upset about science funding literally being slashed. The most has been in 50 years. I don't know what I was going to say. It's that, we have Iron Man, right? It's been around for a long time, and it is like that 80-20 split. Like, why is that? Why are women not racing? Is it because they didn't see opportunities to move up? I don't know, right? Like, I don't think anyone has the data to really support that. I think what we talked about, the burden of families, difficulties now, in middle age, right? Either with just a lot of fatigue or other popular people telling women that it's not good for you to race Ironman, or that those of us that were really passionate about it, we just kind of got, for better or worse, like burned out. And I do have athletes that are just tired of doing it. There's not new races that they want to do. Maybe finances, are part of it, but yeah, it's not grown like marathoning has. Now, again, like Boston Marathon, right? Just use every other sport has different, like a more of a either top five, top three time base, which is, of course, because Ironman courses are not certified. It's very difficult. It'd be impossible to put time based, qualifiers in place for the world championship. So, but why have women, not built, why have there not been more women entering the sport? So I think that's something that, all of us have to kind of consider. And I'm not saying it's because of lack of people at the top. However, then I'll take the flip side of that and saying, in the sciences, right? Women, I just saw Sally Ride, right? The first woman astronaut. There's a documentary coming out about her. She's been, she was a role model for me growing up, and so, and she inspired a whole, probably an entire generation of little girls, in the 80s. So seeing people like you at the top level, right, and seeing opportunities does allow women to pursue that for themselves. Anyone, right? Women, minorities, whoever. So when there's not equal representation at the top, or close, I do think that's a real barrier, because when you can't see women like, or people like yourself doing the thing, whatever it might be, then you're like, well, what's the point, right? And I can see a lot of women moving back to this proportionality, one slot, maybe two. We don't know, but that's probably what it's going to be. Thinking, well, I'm always consistently 10th, or ninth or eighth. You're kind of like, well, like I was, right? If I were to re-enter the sport and think I'm going to qualify for Kona, I mean, that's, I would probably, it'd be another 10 years, right? Unless I won the lottery and I could train like a pro, because that's what it would take for me to qualify for Kona. Unless I got really, really lucky. So maybe for some, that's not a good enough reason, to continue to do it. I don't know.
I mean, when I think about like I train here on Oahu with a lot of like really badass women. Like they're cool. They got their shit together. They're smart. They're competent. They're all the things, right? They're awesome. And like next to none of them want to do an Ironman in the next couple of years.
So
Right, like we
have
go
they,
out and we ride like all the time, you know what I
yeah.
mean? Like some of them have done Ironman like once or twice before in the past. Yeah, did that, check the box. Some like just aren't that interested. I don't I mean, and so I don't want to speak for everyone. Obviously, like I'm not speaking for everyone, but I have a pretty good group here of really bad like the kind of women who could if they wanted to do multiple Iron like you know what I mean like they could be doing this and they're absolutely choosing not to. So like in that case like so I guess the whole thing is like if women so that's not to say that women shouldn't have equal representation at the Ironman World Championships, but the reality is if there aren't that many women who are even trying to qualify, then you know what I mean like to have a whole bunch of extra spots when you can't even give them away, like I don't know. I think it doesn't make sense because I would say even in the case where there were a lot of opportunity, like if you go, I mean, I've done, like I have a couple athletes who I'm like, oh, here's your chance to do Kona, right? And like, and I'll in the last couple of years, like when we had like there's more spots here, I'm like, you could do this, like this is your, and I planted the seed, going, if you want to do it, now's your chance, like, and you should probably take advantage because we don't know if this is going to be like forever a situation, so and it was really interesting because it was like, yeah, I probably could. It's not that important to me.
Mm,
So it may be the case that Kona is losing some of its appeal
maybe.
that like we used to
Yeah,
have for it. But it's like even when it's like this is a pretty sure shot for you that you could do this. I personally had several athletes that thought about it and then were like, it's not that important to me. So you're like, okay, and so for those who like are upset about it, yeah, I don't know what my advice is really like, we suffer when we want things to be different than they are.
absolutely.
And so the reality
Have to
is like
accept it.
we,
Yep.
like all the time, no matter what situation we're in, whether, in even it's like, here's our current politics and here's our, just the current like job situation. During COVID, I feel like we saw this a lot. Like
Hmm.
people are really mad that COVID's a thing. Well, like, guess what? It is a thing. It is a thing. So like, our best bet is to like see how we can manage like in this environment. Like last night I'm coaching masters and the water was really hot. And there's people that are mad that the water's hot. And it's like, it is hot. It is. And so like your best bet then is like, let's learn how to manage yourself in this hot environment. Like you're going to overheat if you try to swim your normal paces. So you're going to have to slow down. And so I think that like, and this isn't like I I totally get it because like even as I say this, like I can see people like misinterpreting it as like oh she's saying like don't fight for what you want or just capitulate and give in. And
Mhm.
like that's not what I'm saying. There's ways to like, to show resistance on this kind of thing, but also it's a matter of understanding what the situation is and then adapting your own like response to that and doing it in a way that doesn't drive you crazy. And so like if you want to just be super mad that they're going back to the old ways with Kona, like you can do that, but like the only thing it's likely to achieve is you continuing to be super mad, right? And that puts your nervous system on edge, right? And
Absolutely.
like which is what
Yeah.
we just talked about, like your whole nervous system health. So it's like I don't know, I just wouldn't get super mad about this, but also like I'm not in the situation like like I don't know how much my opinion on this matters right now because I'm
But you're one, you live in Hawaii, so I think, you have a unique perspective on the history, the realities, all of that. You've done it many times. So I think it helps it puts it into perspective, right? For those listeners, and probably most people listening you've been in sport for a long time. Maybe we've got some new people though, some younger athletes, I don't know, and this was kind of on your bucket list and something you were aspiring to do. And so I guess in that respect, don't give up on it if it is something that's really important to you, and find ways to also channel right some of that frustration into action. And I don't know what that looks like yet in terms of yeah, I don't know what that looks like, I guess.
well
But
the other
yeah,
thing is this, like when we think about like why, okay, like again there's two sides to every story and like
of
I'm
course.
holding two things being true right now. I fully feel and understand the mystique and energy that is Kona. Like Kona is legitimately a special place, and when I'm there, I feel it, right? And so like I understand that piece. I think that's very real. And the Kona Ironman being this like definitive thing about you as an athlete or you as a person and your worth and your value, like that if you didn't do Kona, you're not good enough. I mean, all that bullshit. Like Kona is only as important as we decide it's going to be.
Right.
Right. And so,
Right.
like, I guess I just want to repeat that. It's only as important as we decide it's going to be. So, like, as a community, the triathlon community is still expressing that Kona is an important part of our culture as a sport, right? I mean, that's what the survey says. That's what, like, that's how people are voting with their dollars and with their participation. Like, I want to go to Kona. I didn't want to go to Nice. I didn't want to go to wherever, right? I want to go to Kona. There's still an allure there for people. And if you decide that that allure is not for you, that's a super healthy place to be mentally and emotionally. And like I know some women, awesome women who have qualified for Kona multiple times and turned it down because they were just like, I just don't like I don't feel the appeal that other people feel. And so like I guess in saying that, maybe this can be the closing thought, is that you can decide for yourself, no matter what the triathlon community says, you can decide for yourself how important is Kona. And if to you it just remains like a massive pull at your heart and you really, really want to go because you want to experience it for yourself, great, go. But if the reason that Kona is a big deal to you is because social media and the triathlon world and the pundits and the, like everybody's telling you that like Kona's like the thing and like you're not a real athlete if you haven't done Kona, like that's straight up bullshit. So it's like decide for yourself how important Kona is. And if it's important to you, chase it. But don't let other people decide for you how important Kona is to like your legacy as an athlete because it's not that important.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, that's fantastic because, and I'll have one more thing to add because I think we've talked about this, my history with triathlon, with Kona in particular, in that, when my first Ironman, afterwards, I was told, I didn't even have this in my mind, right? I was like, oh, I'm going to do an Ironman, you're really good. Like you can qualify for Kona. and 12 Ironmans later, and I never qualified for Kona. And so I had that baggage for a long time, right? I was somehow failing because I couldn't qualify. And then on top of it, the same person, basically, not so much even insinuated, like wanted all coaches that were working under them to be Kona qualified because that was going to be legitimate. And I mean, that I carried that for a long time, right? Probably even the last couple of years. Like, oh, I'm not a good coach. I'm not legitimate. Because I couldn't qualify for Kona, even though I had some pretty decent races, blah, blah, blah. And so you're absolutely true. It's so perfect way to end this, right? Like don't let someone else dictate. Don't let the community dictate, what you are as an athlete, your performance, right? Like it doesn't matter. And as for myself, I'll just use myself as an example because I carried that baggage for so long. I always knew that if I did qualify, it would be one and done. Not that I would end my Ironman career, but having lived in Hawaii, knowing where I thrive and what I'm really good at and where I really suffer, like I know that race would be a participation event for me. I don't do well in the heat. I don't want to do well in the heat. I don't give a shit. Kona is a single race in a single environment, and some people do very well at it. It doesn't mean that person is the best triathlete in the world. It's only they're the best triathlete in that race, right? Because to be totally honest, when Nice became an option, it actually sparked my desire to maybe do another Ironman because I would prefer to race in Nice. That course suits my abilities, my strengths. I love to climb. I like very difficult courses, Nice can be quite hot as well, but yeah, I think, again, Kona is one type of race and one environment. And so maybe it doesn't suit you as an athlete, and that's okay too, right? That doesn't mean that, like a lot of times, the athletes that do very well in Kona don't do well in other races. And so you have to keep that perspective as well. So, yeah. Again, yeah, for me, it's like I let it go finally. And I'm glad I did because I carried that bag for a long time. And, I wish I hadn't. It's unfortunate, right? But it's all a learning process too. And so now I can maybe help others shed that
Yeah,
baggage of,
and take
you
that
know,
lesson and apply it to like other areas of your life
yeah,
too, right? And so like when
right.
you look at like any area of your life where you feel like I'm failing or I'm not measuring up, I'm not achieving like whatever standard, and you're like, who set that standard? How legit is it? Right? And it's just like if some random person who like you don't know or like is setting that standard and you're feeling like I need to live up to that in order to be good enough, in order to be worthy, like
Right.
whatever.
Or whatever.
It's like,
Yeah.
is it true? Is that true? And you're like, oh, actually, like it only is if you decide that it is.
Right. Right.
You just
Right.
decide that it's not.
Yep.
So
Yep.
anyway,
Well,
I will say I didn't go the one Kona I didn't go to watch or to like I go to Kona. I mean, I live on Oahu, so it's a pretty easy trip over. So like if I'm not racing, I'm there watching, cheering. A lot of times I have athletes that are racing there. The only time I didn't go was last year when it was the male only. Like so, like I went on, in 22 when it was the 2 day thing, and I thought that was cool. But I'll be honest, the second day, by the end of the second day, I was just a spectator. I was so tired and I didn't care
yeah.
anymore. Like I watched the men, and so it was the men on the second day. Like I watched the pro men finish, and then like I mean the rest of it, I was like I'm tired of being on my feet. Like I'm sunburned, I'm hot, I'm sweaty, I stink. I'm going back to my condo. I need to take a shower. Like I don't care anymore about watching the rest of this, which is like unfortunate. It was just like overwhelmed. It was too much.
Hmm.
But then like in 23, the women's race was like, oh my God, was that inspiring? I mean, it was just really cool. The whole time I felt genuinely really inspired, like in the days leading up, the day
Yeah.
of, the day after, it all was amazing. And I specifically remember thinking, there's zero chance that the men are going to bring this energy. Like the men are going to bring their own energy, which is fine. It's a different energy. It's not the energy for me. And so I was like, I am still very interested in the pro race. I want to watch, I want to see who finishes. So I watched the whole thing like on YouTube or online or whatever, but from home. I'm really glad that I did. I thought I don't need to be around all that energy. I do think I think that I'm more interested in a race over there that's male and female than only male. So I'll put it that way. right? Like
Yeah.
most
So
interesting is only women. Second interesting is male and female. When it's a male only race, like
no,
I don't
not
even want to live. I don't want to be on the island where that's
right.
happening.
No, I totally agree. I would not. I would not. But are you going to go this year? Are you going to
I
go
don't
and
know.
support? Yeah.
I don't
Yeah.
have. I've done this before. They've been like, "No, I'm not going this year," and then like 2 weeks before,
Yeah.
somebody's like, "Should we go? Let's go!" And like, I mean, I've done that race where like, we literally like where there's no accommodations left, but like some local resident is like pitching. No kidding, no joke,
Pitch
pitching
a
a
tent.
tent in their
Yeah.
backyard, and like we literally went over. And we're like, Kona by bike. Like there's no rental cars, so we just like flew our bikes over there. We with backpacks rode to this house, like camped out in a tent overnight. It just was like,
Yeah.
and genuinely, that was probably the most fun I've ever had. Like watching
Yeah.
Kona was the year that like we're literally camped out in a tent. It just felt so like, I don't know. So we'll see. I only have one athlete that's doing it this year. I say only one because sometimes I have more, but like, so I'll likely go like to support her, being over there, but I don't have
Yeah.
faith at this
Well,
point.
what's the usually the last cutoff qualifying is when? I don't know what
I
the
don't know.
new
It's like I don't have anyone that's even trying. Like,
I know I
I
don't
guess
either.
that's my point. Like, I feel like a decade ago,
Yeah, you
I
knew.
feel like I had a lot of athletes that were trying, like they were going for it. Like they would hire me, they'd be like, "I'm doing this
I'm
race
doing
because
this.
I
Yep.
want to qualify for Kona." And I'm like, so we have this shared goal. We know we're training like this, and I feel like since COVID, that has shifted so severely that like the amount of athletes I personally work with who want to qualify for Kona, I can hold in one hand. And it used to be like nearly almost everyone. So I don't know how unique like my cohort is or if that's like more across the board.
I
I
think it's
just don't
across the
I'm not
board.
seeing the
Yeah.
popularity in my group of friends.
Yeah. My feeling is it's kind of across the board. I don't know. I mean, a lot, and you're right. You had mentioned, you had some athletes that did Kona and then that was their capstone. I mean, I had an athlete that they did Nice and that was they basically stepped it. They're like, I'm not going to do anything this year, and just they're doing their I don't know what they're doing, but when
Mine that went to Nice did the same thing. Like this
yeah,
year,
they're like,
she's like,
I'm
I need a
just
break. I'm
done,
not
done.
racing.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay, cool.
And I do think Nice was a very difficult course for a lot of people, and that might have been too much for a lot of people. And now it makes me want to do it even more. So maybe I'll do it. Maybe I will get back, and I don't know. We'll see. I
Yeah,
don't really
it's
want
like
to.
they're gonna have the half world championships there. So like that's a cool and like it's like by the way, that's a really cool goal too, right? So it's
Yeah,
like
yeah, yeah,
there's other really cool goals that you can chase if Kona's not your thing,
yep,
you know.
yep, yeah, yeah, yeah. And yeah. So interestingly, I think I've done more Ironman than 70.3s, and that's such I'm not even though I think I'm better at 70.3, I think I'm more of a mid, have some top end speed that I don't think is I'm not able to capitalize on it in Ironman. I've just never been a 70.3 type of, I'm like, well, if I'm going to travel and spend the money, I want to do it. I want to go do something all day. That's I'm like, why spend the money if you're only going to do it for half the day, 4.5, 5 hours? It's not worth my
It's
time.
it's so funny. I have some friends that are going to like so there's a bunch of ocean swim races here like in Hawaii and like starting this weekend there's race series, right? And so like I get the Big Island has ocean swim races that are like 1 mile long and there's three of them like in a series or whatever and the first one's tomorrow and some of my friends are going and they're like, "Hey, do you want to come?" And I really thought about it. So I'm like, "Oh, I'm swimming a lot right now, so like jumping into these series like even I've never done that one on the Big Island, like that could be cool." And my biggest turnoff was I was like, "Oh, it's only a mile." I'm not like flying all the way over to the Big Island to swim for a mile. We just so like,
Exactly,
I mean,
exactly.
it's really fascinating though, because like, well, if it was 2 or 3 miles, like I would,
You might
right?
go.
But if
Yeah,
it's only 1 mile, like I'm not gonna do it. And like that is in and of itself my own like brain virus, like because it's like it still would be a really fun experience. Like it's a girls' trip, right? Like
yeah,
there's
yeah.
bonding that goes on over there. Like who cares if you're swimming for 20 minutes or 40 minutes or 60 minutes, right? Like does it actually matter? It doesn't. That's only what I've decided in my own head
Right.
matters.
I know. Oh yeah, I know. Same thing. Same,
So like
same.
it's not worth it if I'm only going to swim for a mile,
I
but
know.
a mile race can be really hard. That it is in and
Yeah,
of itself its own challenge, and it's a
yeah.
good, cool challenge. You're redlining for the whole time versus like
Absolutely.
you pace yourself in longer races. So it's like, yeah, I could examine my own mindset around like why are short races not like worth it or valuable enough. Like they are in their own right, but like
Well,
my brain is warped.
but but on the flip side, because everything has two sides, I think for both of us, right? Like we love training, and like, for me, like a lot of that, that equation of like, is it worth it or is it not? Like I would rather just go spend a half day training on my own. So there's a certain amount of like the ease that used to be a catered race, right? Like you're going to go train all, race all day, train all day. It's like there was like an equation in my mind that goes on. It's like, well, for like a 10K, I'm like, well, I could go do a hard 10K on my own and that's fine. I know it's not the same, and I know that if I went and towed the line I would get more out of myself, but I don't need to sign up for a shorter race in order to get me out the door. I love training even if there is no races. I've had some of my best training years when there's no races, like during COVID. And that's not, I've had to also check that, because that's not reality for a lot of people. And I work with a lot of athletes that they need a race to get out the door. And it's harder for me to connect with them because I don't understand that mindset. Like I can go train hard, easy, whatever. I'm sure you're the same, right? So you're like, well, I could go do a mile swim,
Yeah.
or I could go do a mile swim out my back door, right? Because you could go do that. And so I think there's also that component.
Even the
But
Waikiki rough water swim, like there was a time, this is like before marriage and kids, but when I was here just as a single athlete or whatever, and we would essentially do the Waikiki rough water swim every single Sunday afternoon. Like I would just meet some of my friends down there and we would swim the one way. It was actually really fun. We'd swim the one way, we'd put a credit card in our swim caps. We would finish the race like down at the other end at Duke's, and we would sit in our
nice.
bathing suits, drink beer all Sunday afternoon, right? And then we would like walk back to our cars
I
barefoot.
love it.
And sometimes once we actually swam back, which was fun. It was like drunk swimming on the way back. This is, these are the fun, crazy things we did. But it like I remember then thinking like when the Waikiki race would come up, it
And
like,
you're
and it
like,
was like $100 to like
to
to
go.
do. I'm like, why would I pay $100
Yeah.
to do the swim? I do that every single Sunday,
Yeah.
right? And so it was like
Yeah.
it wasn't important to me to like put a timing chip on and have my name on a list, because I'm like I did it every Sunday, and I couldn't therefore justify spending money to do the thing that I did for free every week. And so for me personally, it was like, because it's not about the race, it's about just the experience and the doing the thing, and I love to do the thing. And I'm with you.
Yeah.
I don't need a
Yeah.
race to do that.
It's, and for me now, so a lot of people have transitioned to ultras, right, and trail running, and so I came from that. Like I was trail running before I even started doing Ironman, and I still trail run. I trail run a ton. I do some pretty big. I've done big self-supported 26, 30 mile. Like I'm literally out there on my own, right, doing this, and now when I think about, oh, maybe I should sign up for an ultra, and I'm like, but then paying to do what I do already and with other people, and I don't like being with people. So why would I do this, right? But a lot of people are doing ultras because they feel safer, being on a trail with other people, and I totally get that. And I'm also like, oh God, I have to go run on a trail with other people and like have to interact. That sounds horrible. So that's been my experience lately, even though I'm like, maybe I'll sign up. We'll see. But yeah, anyways. And I also, I've said this to several, well, I don't know if I've said this to other people or publicly, but I'm like, I hope triathletes don't bring the vibe of triathlon to ultra running, because we just do not need that extra vibe in ultra running, which is generally much more chill, go with the flow type of attitude. So we'll see.
Maybe
We'll see what,
the chill, laid back attitude and energy of ultra running will be more
a good, yeah,
powerful than the type A
than the
energy
type
that
A.
the
Yeah.
triathlete brings
I
in, and
hope.
so it overwhelms that, and it
I
chills out
hope.
the triathlete. Like maybe.
Yeah, I hope.
Anyway, oh my God, Mikki, we can talk, can't we? It's like
I
been
know.
like 100
A
minutes
lot. Okay.
in. Anyway, okay, so
Thanks for
we're gonna
doing this,
stop
Michelle.
talking. But if
Yeah.
anybody wants to know about how like Mikki and I talk, like Mikki and I decided to start a podcast, and like we talk like this like fairly frequently, and like we should just record these and put them out and come along with us on our chit chats. So thanks. If anyone listened to this whole thing, you're our people.
Yep. Yep. So, well, take care, and we'll be back to like more structured, a little bit more structured, not totally structured.
Just tell stories next time, and it's going to be really interesting. Like next
It
time,
is.
everybody's going to get to know us even better,
Yes.
because we're going to tell stories and they're going to be interesting.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks, Michelle. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, bye.